Hello, guys and gals, and this is part 3 of our reading of William Goldman's The Princess Bride, a hot fairy tale. We're going to go over the copyright information, which is copyright 1973 by William Goldman. It says all rights reserved. Let me just find the actual page here. All Rights Reserved, published in the United States by Ballantine Books, a division of Random House Incorporated, New York, and simultaneously in Canada by Ballantine Books of Canada, Limited, Toronto, Canada, Library of Congress, and then it gives all that. It also says the cover art is by Norman Green. So, anyways, in the last book, William Goldman got home, and they're talking about their problem with the help or maids and stuff like that. And really, I think that's about all that happened. We found out more about the family and stuff like that. So, anyways, we are going to continue where we left off, where they're having a meal of pot roast or something. Okay, wait, did I not? Oh, yeah, easy fella. He splatted another fat spoonful onto his plate. Jason, they're just loaded, I said then. I'm really hungry, Dad, he said, not looking at me. Fill up on the meat then. Why don't you? I said. Eat all the meat you want. I won't say a word. I'm not eating nothing, Jason said, and he shoved his plate away and folded his arms and stared off into space. If I were a furniture salesman, Helen said to me, or perhaps a teller in a bank, I could understand, but how can you have spent all those years married to a psychiatrist and talk like that? You're out of the dark ages, Willie. Helen, the boy's overweight. All I suggested was he might leave a few potatoes for the rest of the world and stuff on this lovely prime pot roast your treasure has whipped up for my triumphant return. Willie, I don't want to shock you, but Jason happens to have not only a very fine mind, but also an exceptional keen eyesight. When he looks at himself in the mirror, I assure you he knows he is not slender. This is because he does not choose at this age to be slender. He's not that far from dating, Helen. What then? Jason is 10, darling, and not interested at this stage in girls. At this stage, he is interested in rocketry. What difference does a slight case of overweight make to a rocket lover? When he chooses to be slender, I assure you, he has both the intelligence and the willpower to become slender. Until this time, please, in my presence, do not frustrate the child. Sandy Sterling in her bikini was dancing behind my eyes. I'm not eating, and that's it, Jason said then. Sweet child, Helen said to the kid, in that tone she reserves on this earth only for such moments. Be logical. If you do not eat your potatoes, you will be upset, and I will be upset. Your father clearly is already upset. If you do not eat your potatoes, if you do eat your potatoes, I shall be pleased. You will be pleased. Your tummy will be pleased. We can do nothing about your father. You have it in your power to upset all or one, about whom, as I have already said, we can do nothing. Therefore, the conclusion should be clear, but I have faith in your ability to reach it yourself. Do what you will, Jason. He began to stuff it in. You're making a poof out of that kid, I said, only not loud enough for everyone but me and Sandy to hear. Then I took a deep, deep breath, because whenever I come home, there's always trouble, which is because Helen says I bring tension with me. I always need inhuman proof that I have been missed and I'm still needed, loved, etc. All I know is I hate being away, but coming home is the worst. There's never really much chance to go out. Well, what's new since I'm gone? Chit-chat. Since that, Helen and I talk every night anyway. I'll bet you're a whiz on that bike, I said then. Maybe we'll go for a ride this weekend. Jason looked up from his potatoes. I really loved the book, Dad. It was great. I was surprised, and he said it because naturally I was just starting to work my way to that subject matter. But then, as Helen always saying, Jason ain't no dummy. Well, I'm glad, I said, and was I ever? Jason nodded. Maybe it's even the best I read in all my life. I nibbled away at my spinach. What was your favorite part? Chapter 1, The Bride, Jason said. That really surprised me. Not that chapter 1 stinks or anything, but there's not that much that goes on compared with the incredible stuff later. Buttercup grows up mostly is all. How about the climb on the cliffs of insanity? I said. Then that's in chapter 5. Oh, great, Jason said. And that description of Prince Humperdinck's Zoo of Death? That's the second chapter. Even greater, Jason said. What knocked me out about it, I said, was that it's this very short little passage on the Zoo of Death, but yet somehow you just know it's going to figure in later. Did you get that same feeling? Uh-huh. Oh, Jason nodded. Great. Obviously he didn't read it. By then I knew he hadn't read it. Yeah, I figured that out. He had tried to read it, Helen cut in. He did read the first chapter. Chapter 2 was impossible for him, so when he'd made a sufficient and reasonable attempt, I told him to stop. Different people have different tastes, I told him. You'd understand, Willie. Of course I understood. I felt just so deserted, though. I didn't like it, Dad. I wanted to. I smiled at him. How could he not like it? Passion, duels, miracles, giants, true love. You're not eating the spinach either, Helen said. I got up. Time change. I'm not hungry. She didn't say anything until she heard me open the front door. Where are you going? She called then. If I'd known, I would have answered. I wandered through December. No top coat. I wasn't aware of being cold though. All I knew was I was 40 years old and I didn't mean to be here when I was 40, locked with this genius shrink wife and this balloon son. It must have been 9 o'clock when I was sitting in the middle of Central Park alone, no one near me, no other bench occupied. That was when I heard the rustling of in the bushes. It stopped, then again, very softly nearer. I whirled, screamed, Don't you bug me, and whatever it was, friend or foe, imagined, fled. I could hear the running, and I realized something. Right then, at that moment, I was dangerous. Then it got cold. I went home. Helen was going over some notes in bed. Ordinarily, she would come out with something about me being a bit elderly for acts of juvenile behavior, but there must have been danger clinging to me still. I could see it in her smart eyes. He did try, she said finally. I never thought he didn't, I answered. Where's the book? The library, I think. I turned and started out. Can I get you anything? I said no. Then I went to the library, closed myself in, hunted out The Princess Bride. It was in pretty good shape, I realized as I checked the binding, which is when I saw it was published by my publishing house, Harcourt Brace Jovanovic. This was before that. They weren't even Harcourt, Brace, and World yet. Just plain old Harcourt, Brace, period. I flicked to the title page, which was funny since I'd never done that before. It was always my father who'd done the handling. I had to laugh when I saw the real title, because right there it said The Princess Bride, S. Morgenstein. Classic tale of true love and high adventure. You had to admire a guy who called his own new book a classic before it was published, and anyone else had a chance to read it. Maybe he figured if he didn't do it, nobody would, or maybe he would just try to get the reviewers a helping hand. I don't know. I skimmed the first chapter, and it was pretty much exactly as I remembered. Then I turned to the second chapter, the one about Prince Humperdinck, and the little kind of tantalizing description of the Zoo of Death. And that's when I began to realize the problem. Not that the description wasn't there, it was, and again, pretty much as I remembered it, but before you got to it, there was maybe 60 pages of text dealing with Prince Humperdinck's ancestry and how his family got control of Florin and this wedding and that child begatting this one over here who then married somebody else. And then I skipped to the third chapter, the courtship, and that was all about the history of Gilder and how the country reached its place in the world. And the more I flipped on, the more I knew. Morgenstern wasn't writing any children's books. He was writing a kind of satiric history of his country and the decline of the monarchy in Western civilization. But my father only read me the action stuff, the good parts. He never bothered with the serious side at all. About 2 in the morning, I called Hiram in Martha's vineyard. Hiram Hayden had been my editor for a dozen years, ever since Soldiers in the Rain, and we've been through a lot together. But never any phone calls at 2 in the morning. To this day, I know he didn't understand why I couldn't wait till maybe breakfast. You're sure you're all right, Bill? He kept saying. Hey, here, Hiram, I began after about 6 rings. Listen, you guys published a book just after World War One. Do you think it might be a good idea for me to abridge it and we republish it now? You're sure you're all right, Bill? Fine, absolutely. And see, I'd just use the good parts. I'd kind of bridge where there were skips in the narrative and leave the good parts alone. What do you think, Bill? It's 2 in the morning up here. Are you still in California? I acted like I was all shocked and surprised so he wouldn't think I was a nut. I'm sorry, Hiram. My goodness, what an idiot. It's only 11 in Beverly Hills. Do you think you could ask Mr. Jonovic, though? You mean now, tomorrow, or the next day? No big deal. I'll ask him anything, only I'm not quite sure I'm getting an accurate reading on exactly what you want. You're sure you're all right, Bill? I'm in New York tomorrow. Call you then about the specifics, okay? Could you make it a little earlier in the business day, Bill? I laughed and we hung up. And I called Zig in California. Everts Ziegler, I used to know a Ziegler, has been my movie agent for maybe 8 years. He did the Butch Cassidy deal for me, and I woke him up too. Hey, Zig, could you get me postponement on the Stepford Wives? There's this other thing that's come up. Your contract to start now. How long is postponement? I can't say for sure. I've never done an abridgment before. Just tell me what you think. What you think that they do. I think if it's a long postponement, they'd threaten to sue, and you'd end up losing the job. It came out pretty much as he said. They threatened to sue, and I almost lost the job and some money and didn't make any friends in the quote-unquote industry, as those of us in show business call movies. But the abridgment got done, and you hold it in your hands, the good parts version. Why did I go through all that? Helen pressured me greatly to think about an answer. She felt it was important, not that she know it necessarily, but that I know, because you acted crackers, Willie boy, she said. You had me truly scared. So why? I never was worth beans at self-scrutiny. Everything I wrote is impulse. This feels right. That sounds wrong. Like that. I can't analyze not my own actions, anyway. I know I didn't expect this to change anybody else's life the way it altered mine. But take the title words, True Love and High Adventure. I believed in that once. I thought my life was going to follow that path, prayed that it would. Obviously it didn't, but I don't think there's high adventure left anymore. Nobody takes out a sword nowadays and cries, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father, prepare to die." And true love you can forget about too. I don't know if I love anything truly as any more beyond the porterhouse at Peter Luger's and the cheese enchilada at El Parador's. Sorry about that, Helen. Anyways, here's the good parts version. S. Morgenstein wrote it, and my father read it to me, and now I give it to you. What you do with it will be of more than passing interest to us all. New York City, December 1972. 15 minutes in, and we're finally getting to the story. Chapter 1, The Bride. The year that Buttercup was born, the most beautiful woman in the world was a French scullery maid named Annette. Annette worked in Paris for the Duke and Duchess of Guiche. I'm going to pronounce it like that. I don't know how it's really pronounced. Guiche, maybe? And it did not escape the Duke's notice that someone extraordinary was polishing the pewter. The Duke's notice did not escape the notice of the Duchess either, who was not very beautiful and not very rich, but plenty smart. The Duchess set about studying Annette and shortly found her adversary's tragic flaw: chocolate. Armed now, the Duchess set to work. The Palace de Guiche turned into a candy castle. Everywhere you looked, bonbons. There were piles of chocolate-covered mints in the drawing room, baskets of chocolate-covered nougats in the parlors. Annette never had a chance. Inside a season, she went from delicate to whopping, and the Duke never glanced at her in her direction without sad bewilderment clouding his eyes. Annette, it might be noted, seemed only cheerier throughout her enlargement. She eventually married the pastry chef, and they both ate a lot until old age claimed them. Things, it might also be noted, did not fare so cheerily for the Duchess. The Duke, for reasons passing understanding, next became smitten with his very own mother-in-law, which caused the Duchess ulcers. Only they didn't have ulcers yet. More precisely, ulcers existed. People had them, but they weren't called ulcers. The medical profession at this time called them stomach pains, and felt the best cure was coffee dolloped with brandy twice a day until the pain subsided. The Duchess took her mixture faithfully, watching through the years as her husband and her mother-in-law blew kisses at each other behind her back. Not surprisingly, the Duchess's grumpiness became legendary, as Voltaire had so ably chronicled, except this was before Voltaire. The year Buttercup turned 10, the most beautiful woman lived in Bengal, the daughter of a successful tea merchant. The girl's name was Aluthra, and her skin was of a dusky perfection unseen in India for 80 years. There had only been 11 perfect complexions in all of India since accurately accounting began. Aluthra was 19 the year the pox plague hit Bengal. The girl survived, even ill her skin did not. Even if her skin did not. When Buttercup was 15, Adela Tyrrell of Sussex on the Thames was easily the most beautiful creature. Adela was 20, and so far did she outdistance the world that it seemed certain she would be the most beautiful for many, many years. But then one day, one of her suitors, she had 104 of them, exclaimed that without question Adela must be the most ideal item yet spawned. Adela, flattered, began to ponder on the truth of the statement. That night alone in her room, she examined herself pore by pore in her mirror. This was after mirrors. It took her until close to dawn to finish her inspection, but by that time it was clear to her that the young man had been quite correct in his assessment. She was was through was through oh, through no real fault of her own, perfect. As she strolled through the family rose garden, watching the sunrise, she felt happier than she had ever been. Not only am I perfect, she said to herself, I am probably the first perfect person in the whole long history of the universe. Not a part of me could stand improvement. How lucky I am to be perfect and rich and sought after and young and young? The mist had risen around her as Adela began to think, well, of course, I'll always be sensitive, she thought, and I'll always be rich, but I don't quite see how I'm going to manage to always be young. And when I'm not young, how am I going to stay perfect? And if I'm not perfect, well, what else is there? What indeed? Adela furrowed her brow in desperate thought. It was the first time in her life her brow had ever had to furrow, and Adela gasped when she realized what she had done. Horrified that she had somehow damaged it, perhaps permanently, she rushed back to her mirror and spent the morning, and although she managed to convince herself that she was still quite as perfect as ever, there was no question that she was not quite as happy as she had been. She had begun to fret. The first worry lines appeared within a fortnight, the first wrinkles within a month, and before the year was out, creases abounded. She married soon thereafter the self-same man who accused her of sublimity and gave him Mary Heck for many years. Buttercup, of course, at 15, knew none of this, and if she had, would have found it totally unfathomable. How could someone care if she was the most beautiful woman in the world or not? What difference could I have made if you were only the third most beautiful or the sixth? Buttercup at this time was nowhere near that high, being barely in the top 20, and that primarily on potential. Certainly did not. Oh, sorry. Buttercup at this time was nowhere near that high, being barely in the top 20, and that primarily on potential. Certainly not on any particular care she took of herself. She hated to wash her face. She loathed the area behind her ears. She was sick of combing her hair, and did so as little as possible. What she liked to do, preferred above all else, really, was to ride her horse and taunt the farm boy. The horse's name was Horse. Buttercup was never long on imagination, and it came when she called it, went where she steered it, did what she told it. The farm boy did what she told him to. Actually, he was more a young man now, but he had been a farm boy when orphaned. He had come to work for her father, and Buttercup referred to him that way still. Farm boy, fetch me this. Get me that, farm boy, quickly, lazy thing. Trot now, or I'll tell father. As you wish. Okay. That was all he ever answered. As you wish. Fetch that, farm boy. As you wish. Dry this, farm boy. As you wish. He lived in a hovel out near the animals. And according to Buttercup's mother, he kept it clean. He even read when he had candles. I'll leave the lad an acre by my will, Buttercup's father was fond of saying. They had acres then. You'll spoil him, Buttercup's mother always answered. He's slaved for many years. Hard work should be rewarded. Then, rather than continue the argument, they had arguments then too, they would both turn on their daughter. You didn't bathe, her father said. I did, from Buttercup. Not with water, her father continued. You reek like a stallion. I've been riding all day, Buttercup explained. You must bathe, Buttercup, her mother joined in. The boys don't like their girls to smell of stables. Oh, the boys, Buttercup fairly exploded. I do not care about the boys. Horses love me, and that is quite sufficient, thank you. She said that speech. Oh, she said that speech loud, and she said it often. But like it or not, things were beginning to happen. Shortly before her 16th birthday, Buttercup realized that it had now been more than a month since any of the girls in the village had spoken to her. She had never much been close to girls, so the change was nothing sharp, but at least before there there were head nods exchanged when she rode through the village or along the cart tracks or along the cart tracks. But now, for no reason, there was nothing a quick glance away as she approached. That was all. Buttercup cornered Cornelia one morning as the blacksmiths and at the blacksmiths and asked about the silence. I should think after what you've done, you have the courtesy not to pretend to ask, came from Cordelia. And what have I done? What? You've stolen them. With that, Cordelia fled. Not Butter, but fled, but Buttercup understood. She knew who them was. The boys, the village boys. The beef-witted, feather-brained, rattle-skulled, clod-pated, dim-domed, noodle-noggined, sap-headed, wunk-knobbed boys. Okay, now that was a sentence and a half. Whoa. We are about out of time. And with that exchange, we made it to page 37. That's nice. Anyways, we've been reading from William Goldman's The Princess Bride, a hot fairy tale. And we're finally to the fairy tale. Anyways, 3 parts in and we're finally to the story. That's good. Anyways, if you like this content, then make sure you like and subscribe, ring the bell so you know when I upload. Also, if you want to support me anyway, or if you want to join the Discord server, all the information will be in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.